Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Chris Backe and Ian Brocklebank on the line, and these two guys are running the virtual playtesting Discord, and we are going to talk about virtual playtesting and all sorts of online things that we're dealing with today. But say hello, guys.
Hello.
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 Great to
And,
be here.
right, thank you. And so before we get into what I think would be great, and you guys can argue over who goes first, but we all sort of know how we got here collectively. But for you two, can you give a little bit of background and how you started the virtual playtesting Discord?
Ian, go ahead.
Um, I suppose I think the case was, for a lot of the sort of amateur designers, we were sort of attending playtest groups. In the UK, they were sort of monthly. I think there were two that were within range of me. So I probably used to get one occasionally on a good month. I'd get two in, and then suddenly they all stopped. I was actually at a convention, Aircon, in March, and did a little bit of playtesting there. But suddenly, no likelihood of any events coming up in the near future. All of the sort of face-to-face meetings, we weren't even meeting as a games club, and so there was a natural tendency to start looking at alternatives online. I was invited through a friend to be part of some filmed online playtests, and that sort of introduced me to it. And then quickly I wrote a blog post that said, why haven't we been doing this forever? This is so much easier. It's so much better. It's so easy to get people together. And it just naturally grew into something that we wanted to not exactly formalize, but actually make it the main thing instead of just something we do in the gap until we reach a new normal.
Right. Well, and it's an extended gap for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I remember it was probably mid-March that things like I'm in Poland right now, and the country basically just said we're closed for business. Everything not deemed essential just closed. I then realized that if I wanted to do any play testing whatsoever, I'd have to sort of embrace this world of tabletop simulator. And I remember having bought it, maybe 2019 when it was on sale or something, and thought, okay, I'll get around to that whenever I feel the need to. So fast forward to mid-March, I have joined the remote playtesting group which is run by Gil Hova and team. And it's a great group to join if you're looking for something. And over time, I realized that it's very American-based. There's really not a lot of time support for the Europeans.
I get it.
Which can join, they start Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And that translates to about 11 p.m. UK time or midnight for me here in Poland. And I'm a night owl. But
Right.
I might get through the first game and then I start fading pretty fast. So in talking with Ian, we both liked how that group was set up, how well it was run, and we just wanted to find a European similar sort of thing for European designers. And we started the Discord server and got some designs in there and opened it up.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting in that on one hand you have everything that's sort of digital now and distributed, but at the same time, right, people's free time typically isn't as distributed, right? Regionally or in time zones, folks are like, well, we sort of, everyone likes to play games in the evening. The evening isn't the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think actually it's surprising how many people the obvious slot, the evening slot, doesn't work out for, especially now when a lot of people aren't going out to work the same way they used to. So we were surprised how many US designers were coming on board, even at sort of midday US time or even earlier. But I think the great thing about sort of spanning time zones is the fact that whatever your time zone, whatever your schedule, it's possible to find someone else who's got the same schedule, even if it's evening for them while you're having breakfast.
Sure, for sure. And so you guys started up the Discord channel, and was it sort of instantly, people were checking it out and you guys were playtesting? Do you think it did it take a while to get awareness? What about that?
I think it really started picking up steam when the realization that everything closing for everyone in the span of just a couple of weeks, really, everyone realized they needed to go online. They needed to do something virtual in order to continue playtesting. And a lot of groups started doing the virtual version of their real world meeting, and that works. And some groups still do that today. But I kind of foresaw something where it was a virtual first group, and from there, and obviously starting everything up, I mentioned this on some of the Facebook groups for board game designers. If you're looking to playtest your games, this is where we'll be playing. It'll be on Thursdays. It'll start Thursday evening European time. And I just kind of continued mentioning it on the groups, answering questions, encouraging people to invite other people. You may know within Discord you can create your own invite links. So really openly and actively encouraging people to bring their friends, whether they were other designers or avid playtesters.
Yeah, it's really interesting from a publisher perspective because I think, okay, from the average consumer perspective, they play games or want to, group up, or if you're a designer, want to have people play your games. That's all part of the process. But I think a lot of the publishers rapidly, it's valuable to everybody, but for a publisher, you get to that point where it's like a requirement to produce, right? Like you're in a position where it's a step you have to go through, and so suddenly, you ran into this block where it's a problem that needed a solution and needed to work, and people who your go-to people, their lives are all very different right now, right? So whether it's an interest or an availability or a time slot, it's not as easy to get your group together the way you might have used to. And so I think all publishers have been looking at and trying to find ways to find and engage with playtesters for sure.
And we definitely would like to invite publishers. The only requirement, of course, is that they have a game that's ready to show in a virtual sort of format: tabletop simulator, Tabletopia, screentop.gg, whatever format they have it in place. The group does have also a culture of reciprocity. So we're asking, as part of that, we're asking the designers to play test at least as much time as other people have given you.
Oh, so, for sure. Sure.
Yeah, so
a protospiel type of
feel. Exactly like a protospiel. So and what that does, beyond just the making everything work, you get inspired by what other people are seeing. You get to stay on the bleeding edge of board games, which is always kind of fun.
Oh yeah. I don't think so. My audience is predominantly creators, designers, and people who are probably looped into what playtesting is. But for sure, it's a good opportunity for your atypical folks who aren't usually part of this part of the business or engage with these folks to learn about it and join in. I think that it's probably easy. It is most likely way easier to get on a server or in a group and start playtesting than perhaps getting invited to that old publisher roundtable of designers they like to playtest their games, right? I think most publishers probably had their group and weren't adding it. I mean, it depends on the publisher, of course.
Yeah, and I think there's been a couple of publishers. So I think Pegasus were one of the early ones. Ravensburger followed on, and they have both run day-long or multi-day events where they've invited virtual pitches. And obviously, once game designers have got their designs into something like Tabletop Simulator, that's a natural way of showing a game. I personally think, from the, traditionally, publishers have always tried to do an awful lot at conventions, but it's primarily about, meeting the customers, meeting the fans, and selling games. Why would they really want to do their pitching or receive pitches there? I mean, it's they've had to receive pitches there, sure, but it actually probably wouldn't be their first choice.
Sure,
And I
sure.
think we will begin to see more publishers at least doing the first sort of pitch, the filter,
Sure.
virtually, and then say, yeah, actually, I like the look of this. Let's make an appointment and we'll meet up.
Oh,
Are you going to be at Essen? We'll meet up at Essen type thing, rather than just meeting someone out of the blue with little more than a sell sheet to show for it.
right. Well, and I mean, you said something. I mean, you said something like likely. I mean, that's just the reality today, right? That is how it's
Yeah.
Well, oh,
happening.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But if I was a publisher, I think I would be thinking, why would I want to go back to the old method?
Yeah. I agree. I think it's still a little bit of like there's still going to be a natural tendency to wanting in person, but for sure, this has opened up avenues for you. Like playtest summits, submission summits, things like that. I think is something absolutely you're going to see ongoing now that everyone's sort of hooked in
Yeah.
and connected, right?
And what also is going to
Yeah.
happen is the tools themselves, the way in which we communicate in this space, it started rough. Everyone had to learn Discord. Everyone had to learn Tabletop Simulator or, these other platforms. They had to learn this all at the same time. And it was a thing that suddenly went from about 141st on the priority list to
Yeah, for
top
sure.
2, top 3. So the good news was, as we were growing this community, everyone's at it basically new for the first time. We're all freshmen in college again.
Yeah.
So, no one really knows
Freshmen in
anything in
college
this
know
new.
how to use Discord.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we're for sure. Though I'll tell you, and obviously over the years I've used all these platforms, and even when we were putting Heroes Welcome on Tabletop Simulator, I did a video with Mark because he did all this bell and whistle stuff to make it effective. But
Nice.
I have to say, and so like Steve Finn, he uses Tabletop Simulator all the time, and he pitched our next sort of natural game together over Tabletop Simulator, and we playtested, refined it there. I work with Keith Matake all the time, and then we've been heavily using Tabletopia for Mall Peak, which is a Skull Hollow sequel for playtesting and refining. Like you just have to get those hours in. I have to say, I still find it to be a weird abstraction layer between the actual. Like for me, like I think for some people it has become natural and perhaps
Yeah.
preferred. For me, I'm still like, man, let me like try to
It's still-
shuffle this deck of cards virtually here and like,
Yeah.
but it's getting
it's
there.
like playing a game wearing oven gloves.
Yeah, exactly.
One hand
No.
tied behind your back.
Yeah.
Now, for what it's worth, some games obviously, and we do agree with that. What we usually say is a rule of thumb, and this goes for most any sort of group, whatever the platform is, whatever the real world time would be to play, double that.
Yeah.
For within the virtual world, and it sort of was a thing we discovered and then has just continued to prove itself time and again. It is clunky. It's not quite as simple or easy as the tech will ever be. And the sooner you can acknowledge that and understand that this is not the final version of the game.
Sure,
This is
sure.
the best we can do right now.
Yeah.
But with that said, the format really lends itself to meeting and engaging with designers from around the world. When I run a playtest in virtual playtesting, I can connect with Ian, a designer in England. I can connect with a designer in Saudi Arabia. I can connect with a designer in the Philippines or Australia or the U.S. or Canada.
Sure.
I can have 6 people at the table in 6 different countries and maybe even 6 different time zones. I would never get that outside of maybe a con.
Oh,
So-
for absolutely, I completely agree. I think it's and I think those are going to be strong connection points. And out of all of this, we will find a number of novel and interesting designs. Right? It's a cross pollination that's very different than you
Exactly.
would, like. It's a far less regional cross pollination than you might expect. If we look back at games from Europe or games from the States, that kind of thing.
It's a leveler as well.
Yeah.
I mean, take one of our designers from Saudi, or we've got designers from South America. they can't just turn up at Gen Con or get across to
Sure.
Essen, not very easily. But actually, virtually, they have equal access.
Yeah.
And I think from our point of view as well, the next time we play test, we'll have five more people from five more different places. Whereas, when you're doing it physically, you tend to get the same people over and over again, and they're getting a bit bored of seeing the game. Well, what have you changed? Have you changed anything? Is that actually any better? You didn't do what I said last time.
For sure, for sure.
But actually having a different group of people and a different set of eyes, and is really healthy. And just the number of games we get to see. I must have play tested over 100 games now on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah.
I was surprised when I started trying to work that out, but that's a lot.
I mean, and it's a terrible marketplace, right? Like in other words, I actually I think these platforms are succeeding in becoming a tool. They're not as much succeeding in becoming a outward facing user experience, right? I still find that like you have to know where you're going, right? Like it isn't well suited for just like the average person to be like, I want to play a game. They haven't, at some point they need to turn that corner, and Tabletopia is a step closer than Tabletop Simulator is, at least as far as the polish you'd want from a player experience, though. Some of the interactions are worse. Yeah.
There's definitely room for improvement on a lot of those aspects, and I do think the tools, as their use case sort of continues to expand. I kind of perceive Tabletop Simulator as the gold standard. It's the OG. Lets you do all sorts of customization options. Tabletopia, being free and able to be played in a browser, makes it easier to get a more casual gamer, someone that hasn't invested in Tabletop Simulator. I've seen a lot of really cool stuff from ScreenTop.gg.
You've mentioned that a few times. I've never heard of them.
So it is. I guess the best way to explain it or to think about it is a Tabletopia competitor, something that is lightweight, that's played in the browser. You create your game in the browser. You share your game via URL, and everything is done within your browser of choice. It is lightning fast.
It's 2D, so it doesn't waste a lot of time with real world physics,
right?
Which I think actually makes it a lot easier to run.
Well, there's a lot of different. I'm sure that's a big part of it, and there are a lot of different games that are suitable to different platforms. I mean, I think a juggernaut coming in is I interviewed Amber. Why does that not sound? Yeah, Amber. From Roll20, and they're predominantly role-playing games, but they're growing and expanding it. But they have become a bigger business. Like they've tapped in. They fulfilled a need in the role-playing market in a way that maybe wasn't as much of a need in the board gaming space, and so they've been able to turn it into a business quicker. So they're accelerating faster and faster right now. So it's a really interesting, because to some degree I'm always very curious and interested in I'm just looking something up, but in the market dynamics, right? Like because ultimately they are a lot of what drives the feature set of these platforms, right? Like, because ultimately it's not a charity for them, and so the more that they're able to figure out and create a product, the faster that they can grow it and improve it, which I think it helps everybody.
I think role-playing is certainly riding the wave, because it's, if you've got a choice of a board game or a role-playing game, I think a role-playing game in these circumstances, played virtually, is closer to the real experience.
Right.
Whereas, we always have to work through the interface with a board game.
Yeah.
And I've seen lots of people who have there's been a bit of a role-playing renaissance, I think, and people who haven't role-played for a long time are now getting involved.
Well, and there's lots of games that, there's people are learning that role-playing is a huge spectrum, and not all of it is, gnomes and wizards, right? You have a lot of different types, and I think that's very telling, that in some ways ultimately what the platforms are trying to do are they're replicating an interface, and role playing interfaces are actually mostly more in your head, right? Like
Yeah.
you get to use the supercomputer in your head much more, whereas I think, board games are still being shoved into, like, basically these platforms have created, these tool sets for creators to make their games, but it's not like none of them match what you'd experience if you had the mobile version of Small World, right, where it was built
Yeah.
for that game. Suddenly that feels great because they cut out the noise, they make it easy, there's no extra buttons. This is still, people making on
there's still
top
a
of a
lot. There's
platform.
still a lot to parse.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've often told newer designers that are new to the virtual space is really just relax, take your time, collect your thoughts, make a good teach, use the tools that are available to you. Any of the platforms have keyboard shortcuts to do the more common things. Everyone's at a different level of learning about that. Hey, did you know you can hit tab to make an arrow pop up over a thing? Hey, did you know you can hit the number 5 to draw 5 cards into your hand in Tabletop Simulator, and so on like that? So sort of balancing everyone's knowledge comes as part of the learning experience we're all enjoying right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, for sure. And I do think the platforms will accelerate and get better both for starting and making games as much as they will for the user experience. Though in some regards, I wonder. Yeah, some of the decisions they make in that, I'm like, how did you come to this decision? But back to
Yeah.
virtual playtesting. Okay, so you guys have this group. We've talked about it, virtual playtesting. On Discord, there's a Facebook group, there's a website you can go to. I'll link these things in the description. And I assume not talking. I mean, whether you're a publisher or just a player who's interested, I assume you just go and you say, hello, can I play test? Hello, can I show a game? Is that about
Yeah.
the entrance that's
So
needed?
Yeah.
So basically, how it works, the best thing to do after you've joined the Discord group, there's a channel at the very top called How It Works. That gives you the Cliff's Notes rundown of how everything kind of works. There's a Google Sheet that we use to collect games that will be played on a given day. What you would do as a designer is just fill in the information to your game. And from there, we're looking for, during the event, we look for the highest row where the designer is present in the lobby. So because people come on at different time zones,
Sure,
it's not
sure, sure.
necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4. We might kind of jump around from 1 to
You just
18
walk
up to
down the
12
list
and
until
so
you
on.
find the group.
Exactly. So what often happens at the start of an event, we'll have enough players for 4 or 5 games. So we'll pick the first 4 games or so. We'll ask each of those designers to give a little pitch to the game. Oh, well, my game is called Armies and Legions. It's an abstract strategy game about whatever. So if you want to play that game and you're not about to show your own game, fill in your name, like basically sign up for it in the spreadsheet. And then we say, okay, so Ian, you've got 4 players, so I'll name them, and I'll say Ian and John and Mary and Anne and whoever. Go drop down to table 1 to try Ian's game.
And then they'll just link into whatever interface is being used. I assume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
so the
So
spreadsheet also
that's all
has
in the spreadsheet as well.
Cool.
yeah.
And we use a common hashtag server name, which means that actually you don't even change that because you normally call up the whole, basically the half dozen games that different designers have got live on Tabletop Simulator at any one time. You just see them all in a list,
Sure.
and it's relatively easy to pick out the right one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So for anyone,
good.
that arrives in the lobby after we've started, as soon as there are enough people in a lobby to start a game, we start a brand new game. And in the meantime, people are welcome to spectate a game that's already in progress. It's very easy to share your screen within Discord. It's also easy to have someone as a spectator to be in Tabletop Simulator, just like the gray circle in the center. They can spectate, they can zoom in and out. They just can't interact or mess with
Sure,
the cards
sure.
and whatnot. So, but when there are enough people in the lobby, we get another game started. We send them down to a table. The Discord server has like room for 10 tables, and we can always add more if we need to.
Cool. And then people get used to using Discord and audio and video and that kind of thing if they want.
We,
Eh,
we will sometimes live stream a table
oh, that's
Yes.
into the
fun.
Discord server. So if there's a few people waiting in the lobby and they're not actually in a game, we'll often stream the game that's going on, so they can listen in, but they're just not actually open. They're not actually in within the tabletop simulator
Yeah.
environment.
Perhaps there's
Yeah.
a Twitch opportunity here for you guys. Um,
Absolutely.
some publishers might be a little less interested on that level of publicity, but there is a desire and an interest to see. I think this stuff at this stage for sure. One of the other things I think you mentioned perhaps before the call started was that there are some other groups doing similar things that you wanted to highlight. What are some of the other
Yeah.
ones?
So obviously we're awesome, and we meet Mondays and Thursdays. Remote playtesting, which is headed up by Gil Hova and the rest of that team. They meet Tuesdays and Saturdays. There are other groups that meet. I know the Seattle group has a meeting on Wednesdays. There's a Philadelphia group that also meets on Wednesdays. There's another group on Thursdays called Break My Game, which is also worth going to. There's actually a Cardboard Edison list that has over a dozen listed. Some of them are more active than others, and it seems like I'm hearing about something new almost every day. So trying to track this, it can almost be a full-time job if you want it.
Sure.
But my encouragement to anyone listening to this, join a couple of the groups. Find a couple of times or a few days of the week that work for you. Join a couple of the groups. Try to get in deeper with one group than just kind of surface level on all of them. The main reason I say that is because the more you get to know the other playtesters in that group, whichever group it is, the more you can tailor your questions to their personal design approaches or whatnot.
Sure. Yeah, and I think ultimately it's at the end of the day, board games still are all about community, and community
Exactly.
involves being part of them, right? Not just dipping in and dipping out.
Exactly.
Well, so thanks so much for being on, guys. I have to a note between, I guess, the UK and Poland and the United States. Some people have been freezing. We've got, I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but we've got some different artifacting. I don't know which is getting recorded or not, but the content's still good. Even if I think over the process, the collective internet backbone right now, just with everything going on, is a little less predictable. But before closing out, is there anything either of you two wanted to add?
Ian, go ahead.
I guess feedback. We've not really covered feedback.
Oh, sure.
But I think we all have a bit of a tendency to sometimes redesign games in our own image. So someone will sort of bring a game, and then we all have to bite our tongue a little bit. But I think we're getting better at it. I think we're getting more disciplined. But the feedback you get from a table of a table full of designers is just really helpful.
I thought you were going to say rubbish.
No, if the game's rubbish, they will tell you. But it just tends to be. It just tends, that they know what you're trying. Often they will know what you're trying to do,
Sure.
and maybe even better than you do, or they will see something that you've not seen. And comparing that to regular playtesting with people who they just know if they like the game or not.
Yeah.
The sort of help that you get with your designs, it's just well worth. It is really helpful,
Sure.
and I'm sure I'm getting better, and my games are getting better as a result.
Absolutely. I guess the last notes I have for anyone listening, obviously we're at 900 members and up, and it's probably more than that if you're listening to this in a few months. We're always looking to welcome people to the table. I don't care where you are, where you're from, as long as you've got a game to show, or if you love playtesting games, you are welcome at our table.
Awesome.
And in fact, if you just want to playtest other people's games, you'll be our favorite member.
Sure, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I think I've done some videos in the past on protospheres and feedback. I think the only 2 cents I would add there, Ian, is I think that understanding who you're playtesting to and their perspective, I think, is a big deal. You will absolutely have a different experience playtesting with designers versus playtesting with players. Sometimes, I guess the distinction ends up being you always want to remember who your market is, right? Who are you making the game for? Because, as you said, designers have specific perspectives or pet peeves, or like a genre of game and give feedback which pulls that game into that direction. So it's often very articulate, engaging, and useful feedback. But at the same time, people who are new to playtesting, it's like the same thing you'd say to anyone going into a proto spiel around take the feedback, but also observe the play and think about how people are engaging and stuff.
So one thing I often ask designers, or one thing I found myself doing is basically asking the question, what kind of feedback are you looking for? Sure. But also, what kind of game do you want this to be? Like, if you were to say, I'm designing a gateway family game, or a party game, or a game for kids, that's going to put me in the mindset of this is the type of game they want to make. So if they start talking about a 30-minute setup, alarm bells start going off.
Sure.
Or, so basically trying to compare what they say they want to what they actually have is a great sort of way of, doing a reality sanity check.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so thank you so much for being on, guys. I'm really excited about all that's happening right now in the space, and I think these playtesting groups are a big part of it. As I mentioned earlier, I'll put all links in the description for people to join and check it out. And as these guys have been saying, just go, right? I mean, I think it's easy to join a Discord channel. You can meet and say, try a game. If you're not familiar with the platforms, I'm sure there are folks like you two who will help explain it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for being on, guys, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
I
look forward to seeing you guys sometime soon.
In a room. All right, cool. Thanks. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.